He still believes in love. He still wants the warmth of a hand in his, the comfort of a woman who knows his worst days and doesn't run. But when the word marriage comes up, his whole body quietly tightens, like someone who once touched a hot stove and never forgot the burn. Here's the uncomfortable part no one prepared you for. More and more men aren't running away from love itself. They're running away from the legal, social, and emotional risks that come attached to marriage. You can call them commitment phobic if you want, but many of them are actually deeply committed in their hearts, just not to a system they don't trust anymore. When was the last time you met a man who said, "I'm scared of losing everything if this goes wrong," and you believed him instead of laughing it off? How many guys do you know who love their girlfriend deeply, live with her, share bills, maybe even raise kids with her? But every time someone jokes, "So when's the wedding?" the room fills with a strange, heavy silence. This isn't just your boyfriend's weird issue. It's a quiet shift happening in living rooms, group chats, and late-night talks all over the world. Men who still believe in partnership, but who are silently terrified of what happens if that partnership collapses under the weight of divorce courts, horror stories, and social pressure. In a lot of modern relationships, there's a quiet loop running in the background that almost no one names out loud. On the surface, it looks like a simple disagreement about when to get married. Underneath, it's a collision between two very different meanings of the same word. For many women, marriage feels like safety recognition, the moment where love becomes official and visible. For many men, especially those who've watched breakups turn into battlefields, marriage feels like stepping into a contract where, if things go wrong, they lose much more than love. So you get this painful pattern. She asks for commitment through marriage, he feels tested or cornered, and they both walk away from the same conversation feeling misunderstood and alone.
Let's call it the love-fear split.
He's not emotionally checked out. He shares a bed, he plans trips, he talks about the future in half-jokes and one-day stories. He may even take on responsibilities that look very much like a husband's role. But inside, there's a small tight knot of fear that says, if I sign that paper and it goes bad, I'm the one who pays the heaviest price. Maybe he's seen a friend lose his house, half his savings, and contact with his kids in a messy divorce. Maybe he grew up watching his father dragged through a process that left him bitter and exhausted. Maybe his older brother still chokes up when he talks about only seeing his children every other weekend. Those images stick. They turn marriage from a romantic idea into a calculated risk. On the other side, his partner may carry her own invisible history. Maybe she watched her mother stay in a painful relationship because there was no financial safety or legal protection. Maybe she saw what happens when there is no formal commitment. A man walks away, starts a new life, and the woman is left to piece everything together alone. For her, the ceremony and the paper are not just decoration. They're a promise that if life gets hard, she will not be discarded. So when he hesitates, she doesn't just hear, "I'm scared of the system." She hears, "I don't choose you fully," even if that's not what he meant at all. This is where the loop really starts to hurt. She brings up marriage as a natural next step, and he feels as if the love they already have is suddenly being put on trial. He becomes defensive or vague. He jokes it off, changes the subject, or says, "What we have is already like marriage. Why do we need the paper?" She hears it as avoiding responsibility. He experiences it as trying to protect himself from a system that, in his mind, does not protect him equally if things fall apart. Neither of them is completely wrong, but both are trapped inside their own private logic. A lot of men won't admit this fear directly. Instead, it leaks out through delays and conditions. Let's wait until my career is more stable. Let's save more money first. Let's see how things go in a few years. Sometimes those are genuinely practical concerns. But sometimes, if you dig deeper, it's a psychological defense mechanism. Keep moving the goalpost so you never have to stand at the altar and feel that mix of love and terror in your chest. It's easier to say, "I'm not ready yet," than to say, "I'm scared that if we break, I will be punished by more than heartbreak." From his side, this often starts much earlier than the first serious talk about marriage. It starts with a quiet promise he makes to himself as a teenager or a young man, usually after watching something that broke him a little. Maybe he stood in a hallway listening to his parents fight about money, child support, and who deserved the house. Maybe he watched his dad sleep on a friend's couch for months, trying to rebuild his life after a divorce. Maybe he saw an uncle slowly lose access to his kids, not because he was a monster, but because everything got so ugly that the children became part of the battlefield. In those moments, a lot of men think, If I ever do this, I'm going to be careful. I'm not going through that.
Fast forward à décades.
Now he's in love. He's not a perfect man, but he's trying. He shows up after work with her favorite snack.
Et fixe things around the house.
He listens, at least more than he used to when he was younger. He introduces her to his friends and his family. He's not playing games. He's building something that feels like a real partnership. And for a while, that feels like enough. The label doesn't matter. The day-to-day closeness is what he trusts. But then the topic of marriage starts to appear, not as a joke, not as a one day, but as a real expectation. He sits across from her at dinner, and she says, "We've been together for years. I need to know where this is going." Her eyes are soft but serious. For her, this is a reasonable question. For him, it lands like a weight on his chest. In his mind, he's thinking, we live together.
Amir every day.
I'm already committed. Why does it feel like what I give isn't being seen? But he doesn't have those words, so what comes out is something vague like, why are you rushing? Or can't we just enjoy what we have? She hears avoidance. He feels accused. Inside, the fear isn't just about losing money or a house. It's about losing the right to his own story if things go wrong. Many men quietly believe that if a relationship ends, the narrative will automatically paint them as the villain. They've seen it happen in friend groups. The woman tells her version, the man disappears, and everyone assumes he was selfish, unfaithful, or emotionally unavailable. Courts, in his imagination, are just a bigger, colder version of that same judgment. Only now, there are legal consequences. So when she talks about marriage, he doesn't just hear, I love you and want to build a life with you. He also hears, if this ever falls apart, I might be the one everyone blames, and I'll have to pay for it in ways I can't control. Think about a simple scene, two people on a couch, watching a movie. On screen, there's a messy divorce storyline. The wife cries, the husband is portrayed as distant and cold, the kids are torn in the middle. The movie ends, the credits roll, and she might say, half joking, see?
Men always ruin it.
She doesn't mean it literally. She's reacting to the story. But his body registers that line as another tiny confirmation that, in the cultural script, men are the ones who fail and women are the ones who suffer. So on some level he thinks, if things go bad, everyone will side with her.
Et elle be the one trying to defend myself.
He may never say that out loud, but the feeling sits there, just under the surface. There's also the fear of failing as a provider or partner once the expectations of husband lock into place. As long as they're just dating or living together, he can still tell himself, I'm doing okay for where I'm at. But the moment he becomes a husband, a lot of men feel as if the margin for error shrinks to almost zero. If he loses his job, if he struggles with money, if he goes through a depressive period, he worries she'll see him as less of a man. Even if she is kind and supportive, that fear doesn't always listen to reality. It listens to old scripts he picked up from his father, from society, from his own shame. Most men don't want to be seen as cowards. They don't want to say, I'm scared. So they dress their fear in logic, statistics, legal details, financial planning. They talk about prenups, about waiting until they're more stable, about the need to be smart. Some of those points are valid. But if you could pause the scene and step inside his chest for a minute, you'd probably feel something much simpler. I don't want to lose my life, my kids, and my dignity if this goes wrong. I don't want to be destroyed by the very thing I entered with love. From the outside, a lot of his behavior can look like pure contradiction. He says he loves you, he acts like a partner, he builds a life with you. And yet, when the conversation turns to marriage, it's like he quietly puts on emotional brakes. If you're a woman watching this, it's very easy to translate that as he doesn't really want me, or he's keeping his options open. Sometimes that's true, but not nearly as often as the internet makes it sound. Very often, what looks like coldness or selfishness is actually a scared system trying to stay safe in the only way it knows how. When he goes quiet after you bring up marriage, many women read that silence as I don't care about your needs, or you're not worth committing to. In his inner language, silence often means, I don't know how to answer this without either lying, hurting you, or exposing how terrified I am. He's trying to regulate his own panic. He's replaying images of things going wrong. He's arguing with himself. If I say yes, am I betraying my own fear?
If he say no, will she leave?
That pause you feel as indifference is, Inside his chest, a storm of conflicting loyalties, to you, to his own past, to his own sense of self-protection. When he says, marriage is just a piece of paper, what many women hear is, you're overreacting, what you want doesn't matter. In his language, that sentence often means, can't you see what we already have? I'm trying to tell you I'm committed in the ways I know how. I'm afraid that the paper will change the dynamic and put me in a position where I have more to lose than you do. He's not denying your longing for security. He's defending the version of safety he understands, one where love is proven through daily presence and effort, not through a legal document that scares him. On the other side, the way you push for marriage has its own language that he often misreads. When you bring up the future again and again, many men hear nagging, pressure, or you're never enough. In your inner language, repeating the conversation usually means, I'm scared. Time is passing. I don't want to invest my heart and my best years into something that could vanish without protection. When your voice tightens and you say, I just need clarity, he may only hear accusation. But inside, there might be a younger version of you who watched your dad leave, or your mom be taken for granted, promising yourself, I will not stay where I'm not truly chosen. When you say, if you loved me, you'd marry me, many men hear a condition. Prove your love by doing the thing that scares you the most, and if you hesitate, I'll decide you never loved me. They shut down, because it feels like there's no room for their fear to exist without being judged as lack of love. But in your language, that sentence is less about manipulation and more about longing. What you often mean is, I need to know I'm not temporary. I need to know that if life gets messy, children, illness, aging, you're not secretly holding a door open to run out of. You're not trying to trap him. You're trying to build a container that feels strong enough to hold both of you when things inevitably get hard. In many relationships, neither side is acting out of pure malice. You're both protecting wounds no one ever helped you name. He's trying to guard his future, his dignity, his connection to potential children. She's trying to guard her time, her emotional investment, her sense of being truly chosen. Without translation, you stand on opposite sides of the same locked door, both shouting in your own language, both feeling unheard. Here's one harsh truth that many couples avoid because it's uncomfortable for both sides. Love does not cancel out risk. You can love someone deeply and still lose them. You can go into marriage with the best intentions and still end up in a place you never imagined. Many men secretly hope that if the love is real enough, it will somehow protect them from courts, conflict, and loss. Many women secretly hope that if the love is real enough, he will gladly step into marriage without hesitation. Both are clinging to a fantasy that love alone will remove fear and uncertainty. It won't. Real commitment always involves stepping forward while still knowing you could get hurt. Another harsh truth: some men are hiding behind genuine systemic fears to avoid growing up emotionally. Yes, there are unfair situations, biased decisions, and horror stories that are very real. But there are also men who use those stories as a shield, so they never have to confront their own avoidance. It's easier to say, the system is rigged against me, than to ask, am I willing to be fully responsible for how I show up as a partner, husband, and possibly father? If every conversation about the future ends with him pointing to other people's tragedies, he's using someone else's nightmare to delay his own decision. At some point, fear stops being just a wound and starts becoming an excuse. On the other side, some women use the idea of marriage as a shortcut to emotional safety that no contract can actually provide. They imagine that once he becomes a husband, he will stop being distant, stop shutting down, stop avoiding hard conversations. They believe the ring and the paper will transform him from emotionally inconsistent boyfriend into reliable, emotionally present partner. But marriage doesn't create qualities that aren't there. If he doesn't know how to handle conflict now, he won't magically know how after the ceremony. If he doesn't respect you now, the contract won't teach him respect. Pressuring a man into marriage without looking honestly at who he is and how he behaves is also a way of avoiding responsibility for your own choices. There's another truth both sides have to face. There is no version of commitment where only one person carries all the risk. Many men secretly wish for a scenario where they can have the emotional benefits of marriage with none of the legal vulnerability. Many women secretly wish for a scenario where they get all the legal and emotional security with no risk of being left or disappointed. But commitment, by definition, is shared risk. You're both betting time, energy, future plans, and emotional health on each other. When either side tries to design a relationship where they can't lose, the relationship stops being a partnership and becomes a negotiation of self-protection. We also have to talk about emotional laziness. It's harsh, but it's there. Many men want peace without vulnerability. They want a calm home, minimal conflict, no emotional demands that stretch them, and they tell themselves, "See, this is proof I'm a good partner. I don't start fights." Meanwhile, their partner is slowly starving for deeper connection and clarity. Many women want certainty without doing the uncomfortable work of seeing the man in front of them clearly. They want to believe that love and a ring will rewrite his character, so they ignore their own doubts and the red flags along the way. Both are trying to avoid the hard work of looking reality in the eye. Responsibility is not equally shared in every situation, but it is always present on both sides. Many men need to own the ways they minimize women's very real fears about time, safety, and security. Dismissing her concerns as drama or pressure is a way of avoiding the discomfort of facing your own ambivalence. Many women need to own the ways they sometimes weaponize shame, threatening to leave, comparing him to other men, or questioning his love, to force a commitment instead of building trust and understanding. And both need to own the ways they let fear drive the car while pretending they're being purely rational. There's also the reality of limbo that many couples underestimate. Staying in a half-committed, half-promised state is not neutral. It quietly shapes the way both of you show up. If you're a man who keeps a woman in that gray zone, living together, sharing life, but never being clear about whether you see her as your long-term partner, you're shaping her future too. You might think you're protecting yourself, but you're also asking her, without saying it, to carry the uncertainty for both of you. If you're a woman who stays for years hoping he'll eventually come around, while every concrete sign points the other way, you're not just being patient. You're making a choice to invest your time in a script that may never change. Children, if they enter the picture, add another layer that no theory can fully prepare you for. Kids don't care about your debates about courts and systems. They care about whether there is stability, respect, and honesty between the two people raising them. Some men justify never committing formally because marriage is too risky, then end up in chaotic breakups that are brutal for kids anyway. Some women push for marriage to secure the family, then ignore obvious patterns of disrespect that eventually explode in front of their children. The hard truth is that the best protection for kids is not a legal label or a refusal to sign one. It's two adults who are honest about who they are, what they can give, and when it's no longer healthy to stay. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for a future child is to get very honest before you bring one into the world. Ask yourselves, if we never married but stayed as we are, would our dynamic be stable enough for a child to feel safe? If we married tomorrow without working on our patterns, would the ring deepen our connection or just harden our disappointments? These are not romantic questions, but they are the kind that separate fantasy from reality. Another practical layer is getting help with the conversation instead of trying to carry it alone. A neutral third party, a counselor, a wise older couple, even structured resources you go through together, can slow things down enough that you both feel less defensive. Many men find that when someone else helps translate their fear into words, their partner can finally hear it without feeling personally attacked. Many women find that when someone reflects their longing back to them, they can ask for what they need without turning every talk into an ultimatum. This isn't about making your relationship a project. It's about admitting that most of us didn't grow up with healthy models for negotiating big decisions under pressure. You can also experiment with commitment in layers instead of jumping straight from no label to marriage. That might look like agreeing on a clear 1 or 2 year plan with concrete steps, what financial goals you're working toward, what personal work each of you is doing, therapy, communication, managing, anger or avoidance, and a specific time when you'll sit down and revisit the marriage question. It's still a risk, but it transforms endless waiting into a living agreement you can both evaluate. If, when that time comes, nothing has moved and his fear still blocks any deeper commitment, then you're no longer in the dark. You have information about whether this relationship can realistically become the partnership you're hoping for. So what do you actually do with all of this? It's not enough to just understand that fear and love are sitting side by side. At some point, both of you have to decide how you want to move. One of the most powerful shifts is to stop arguing about marriage as a vague concept and start talking very specifically about what it means to each of you. That means sitting down, maybe on a quiet evening, and asking each other questions like, when you hear the word marriage, what pictures show up in your mind? Let him describe not just the wedding day, but the divorce scenes he carries inside. Let her describe not just the dress and the photos, but the fear of being left without protection. You're not trying to convince each other yet. You're just putting your internal movies on the table, so you're not fighting invisible ghosts. For him, a practical step is to take responsibility for his fear instead of hiding behind sarcasm, jokes, or endless delays. It's okay to say, "I love you, and I'm also scared of what could happen if this ended badly. I don't want that fear to control me, but I also don't want to pretend it's not there." That kind of honesty is uncomfortable, but it gives her something real to respond to. It turns you from a distant, guarded partner into a vulnerable human being she can actually reach. For her, a practical shift is to respond to that vulnerability with curiosity before pressure. Instead of, "So what, you just never want to marry me?" try, "Help me understand what feels most dangerous about it to you." That doesn't mean you give up your needs. It means you build a bridge instead of throwing a grenade. There is also a smaller, daily level where change happens. If you're a man who fears marriage, start proving to yourself that you can handle discomfort without running away. That doesn't begin at the altar. It begins in small conversations you usually avoid. When she brings up something emotional that makes you want to shut down, experiment with staying present for 5 minutes longer before you escape. When you feel the urge to dismiss her fears with logic, try first reflecting them back. It sounds like you're scared of wasting your time. These micro moments build the muscle you will need if you ever decide to step into deeper commitment.
If you're a woman longing for marriage, you can start by grounding your own sense of worth outside of his decision. That doesn't mean you don't care what he chooses. It means you remember that you are not less than because someone else is not ready. When you base all your value on whether he marries you, every conversation becomes life or death, and that intensity often pushes him further into his shell. Instead, be clear with yourself first. What timeline feels respectful to my life? What are my non-negotiables? At what point does waiting become self-betrayal? When you know those answers, you can communicate them calmly instead of from panic. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to decide your entire future in one conversation. But you can start by trading blame for curiosity, sarcasm for honesty, and vague promises for specific, shared plans. You can start by admitting that both of you are, in different ways, afraid of trusting your lives to another imperfect human. And you can respect that fear without worshiping it. Fear is allowed to sit in the back seat. It does not get to drive. If you heard yourself in this story, whether as the man who still believes in love but not in marriage, or the partner wondering if you're asking for too much, maybe this is your invitation to stop fighting alone and start speaking honestly, even if your voice shakes. You deserve a relationship where both love and fear can be named, where commitment is not a trap but a conscious choice made with open eyes. If this video helped you see something more clearly, consider giving it a like, sharing it with someone who needs to hear a more nuanced side of this conversation, and subscribing to the channel. We're here to help men and women understand each other better, not to create sides, but to build bridges where real relationships can actually breathe.